Welcome to Healthy Kingston. My name is Janet Wade, and our program today is devoted to gun safety. Nationwide, 4.6 million children live in homes with guns that are both loaded and unlocked. And each year in the United States, nearly 300 children ages 17 and under gain access to firearms and unintentionally shoot themselves or someone else. Nearly 600 more die by suicide with a gun. We have the power to prevent tragedies like this from happening. Established in 2012 following Sandy Hook, Mothers Demand Action for Gun Sense in America has developed the SMART, S-M-A-R-T framework to help parents and adults prevent child gun deaths and injuries. Together, we can prevent this. I'd like to now introduce our two special guests, Ms. Kathleen Berry, who is the leader of Southern Massachusetts Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And Detective Mike Skowyra, who is the firearms instructor here with the Kingston Police Department, and again, comes with a tremendous amount of expertise and experience, and again, we're very, very happy to have you here as well.
Thank you, Janet.
So with that said, Kathleen, could you tell us a little bit more about Mothers Demand Action for Gun Sense?
Yes, thank you. Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America is a national organization. It's the nation's largest grassroots organization that works to prevent gun violence. It was founded, as you said, in 2012 by a mother of five, right after the Sandy Hook tragedy. And today it is part of a large national network called Every Town for Gun Safety, and we number over 5 million supporters and active volunteers. I do want to stress that we are not anti-gun. We are anti-gun violence. We respect the Second Amendment, but we believe that we can respect it and still demand common sense, evidence-based laws and policies that have been proven to save lives by keeping guns out of the hands of dangerous people.
How extensive a program is this in Massachusetts?
Well, we have a very active state chapter in Massachusetts, and know that there are state chapters in all 50 states. Our state chapter consists of 8 active local groups, and I lead one of those local groups. It's called Moms Demand Action South Shore, and we cover about 34 cities and towns in southeastern Massachusetts.
What does your organization actually do on the ground?
We do many things. One is we work on legislative advocacy. We also have public education campaigns, such as the BSmart campaign that we're going to talk about today. We honor and support gun violence survivors. Those would be 3 of the main things that we do.
Okay. All right. Tell us a little bit, if you would, about the SMART program.
Yes, Moms Demand Action launched the BSmart program in 2015. I want to ask you and your audience, did you know that in the US, we have the largest reported rate of child unintentional death, gun death and injury in the world? And did you also know that every year 1,500 American children ages 17 and under have their lives cut short by gun violence, of which 100 of those roughly are unintentional shootings and 600 are teen gun suicides.
Wow, impressive numbers.
With this program, we are gearing it to all parents and really all adults who are concerned about kids, guns, and safety. It seeks to prevent tragedies from occurring when unsupervised children and teens gain access to unsecured weapons. Okay. And the SMART acronym helps people in an easy way to remember 5 simple but responsible behaviors.
And I know we're going to go through each one, but
Yes.
what do the SMART, what does it stand for?
S is secure your guns in your homes and vehicles. M is model responsible behavior. A is ask about storage of guns in other people's homes. R is recognize the role of guns in suicide. And T is to tell your peers, spread the word.
All smart. Okay, with that said, Detective Skowyra, guns in homes and vehicles. What is the law? What does the law say about having guns in our homes and in our vehicles? And can you be prosecuted, particularly in Massachusetts, for enabling a child to get access to a gun?
Sure. So specifically relative to, we'll start with in the home. Obviously, any type of firearm, if you're going to own a firearm, you have to be properly licensed. There's LTCs and FIDs. LTC is a license to carry, which typically is your sidearm type, firearms, your pistols, revolvers. It also allows you to own rifles and shotguns. FID basically is essentially rifles and shotguns, more or less used for hunting. But for in the home and in the vehicle, the storage requirements are the same, regardless of if you have an FID or an LTC, their storage requirements are the same. So you need to have one of those to possess the gun to begin with, right? And then in the home, if you're, whether there's other people that live in your home or not, it needs to be properly secured. So whether it's with a trigger lock system, locking the access to the trigger, whether it's in a safe, in a locked cabinet, the weapon needs to be secured in your home if it's not currently on your person in what we call your direct control. So if you're not currently using the weapon in some way, holding it, having it on your side, if it's not currently in your direct control, it needs to be properly secured. In the vehicle, it needs to be both secured and unloaded. There's that slight discrepancy between in the home and in the vehicle. In the home, there's the argument relative to self-defense. Some people would like the ability to have a firearm loaded. But if you do have one loaded and it's not in your direct control, it still needs to be secured from access, not just from children, but from other adults, unlicensed adults, anyone. If, for one reason or another, a child gets access to let's say you're a licensed firearm holder, a child gets access to your firearm, that in and of itself, the child having access to the gun is evidence on its face that you violated the storage laws. So you could be charged criminally. If a child gets access to it, it's a felony. If an unlicensed adult gets access to it, it's a misdemeanor. Either way, you could face jail time and more likely not face losing your license to carry and losing your firearms.
Okay. So the Kingston Police Department abides by this, which is the ruling in Massachusetts,
Correct.
Not necessarily the ruling in all 50 states.
Right.
You said it
so
varies a
that's
bit.
those laws are specifically written by the Massachusetts legislature. Each state has different rules. In general, there's a lot of states that have the different storage laws, but there's a lot of states that don't. Massachusetts does a very good job compared to the majority of the states, but of course, like the numbers you just heard, there's always work to do. But in Massachusetts and the Kingston Police Department in particular, we would obviously investigate any claims of any unsecured firearms, any illegal access to those firearms, and with everything we have investigative-wise to try to identify whether or not that actually occurred, and if it did, who's at fault. And if it's a licensed gun owner that did not properly secure their weapon, more likely than not, depending on the circumstances, they'd face criminal charges.
Okay.
I did think of a couple of statistics that would help underscore the importance of the S that is securing the firearms in the home or the car. One is, did you know that over 75% of unintentional child fatal shootings occurred in the victim's home or in their car? Over 80% of child suicides by guns, those children procured those guns from their own home.
Really?
And finally, everyone is so worried about school shootings. About 78% of active shooters get their guns in school shootings, get their guns from their home or from the home of a relative or a friend. So if we all as a community worked hard to secure the weapons
that we
could
have.
that we have in
Right.
the homes, we could really help put a dent into these horrifying statistics.
Good point. Excellent point. Absolutely. M for model. So being responsible around guns. Detective Skowyra, how often do you think people need to be trained by law, be trained in how to use their guns? And then, as a professional at this and being a firearms instructor, how often do you think that they should go through a training?
Sure. So first, legally, there's only a requirement that you receive one training event for your life to get your LTC or your FID. For an LTC, it's called a basic handgun safety course or basic firearm safety course. For an FID, it's a hunter safety course, or you could do the basic course. Either or, it's just one training event. Usually it's about a day, maybe a half day of training, and then you get a certificate, and that's good to get your LTC or get your FID. You're never required by law to get any additional training.
And that's in Massachusetts?
Correct, that's in Massachusetts. Yep.
What if you buy a gun in Pennsylvania and move to Massachusetts? Do you need to take the training over? Or you've had it before, you don't have to take it again?
It's different. The training's different in each state. So, for instance, some states don't require any training at all. So, Massachusetts would require for you to get your LTC or FID in Massachusetts to abide by the Massachusetts laws relative to the training.
Okay.
So, there's different processes for transferring firearms from one state to another. It's kind of convoluted, but realistically, if you're moving to Massachusetts, you have to plan several months ahead of time relative to applying for your Massachusetts license to carry, and in doing that application, you have to show that you did a training event. So, and it has to coincide with the Massachusetts laws for what needs to be included in that event, and that event is very specifically controlled by the state police and the Firearms Licensing Bureau about what has to be included. So it's very strict. So realistically, another state's training course would not comply with the Mass law. So you would have to do a Mass fire and safety course that complies with the Mass CMRs and general laws relative to that. And then you could transfer your firearms, respectively, once you've done so, once you've received your license to carry.
And what you're telling me, once you get your license, then you take it to the police department?
So
Or
your
you tell them
police
that
department does the licensing procedure.
Oh,
so
okay.
The town that you live in. So you do the class wherever you choose to do the class. They obviously have to be properly licensed with the state. Every instructor has a license number to be able to teach these classes. And then once you've done that class, having that certificate is part of the application process. So you fill out all your information, your background, your history, and then also have that certificate. And your licensing authority, which is technically the chief of police, but a lot of towns, the chief delegates that to another officer, one of his subordinates that would take care of firearms licensing, who would then review all that, do a background check, determine if you're eligible, and then decide whether or not to process your license from there.
Okay. I know we had talked about this earlier, and I'm assuming you would encourage this, that the person learn how to shoot the gun, physically shoot the gun, if they have the gun, so that they know how to use it. Like if we were comparing it to a driver's license.
Exactly. So by Mass law, there's no requirement that you take live fire shooting. You could do the safety course, which does not require live fire shooting, get your license to carry, go purchase a firearm, load it, have it on your, say in a safe next to your bed as home defense, and the first time you ever fire it could be in a home defense situation. Obviously, you want to be proficient with whether it's a firearm or some other sort of tool or weapon. You want to be proficient with it before you actually have the opportunity to have to use it.
Exactly.
Just like driving a car.
Right.
You might get your permit based off a test or a class, but you're not going to get your license or your license to carry unless you actually drive a car. So why shouldn't you shoot a firearm before getting your license?
Exactly.
Again, that's not a requirement by Mass law. There's obviously a lot that goes into making something like that a law, but would it hurt to get the training? Of course not. What I mean? Of course not. So, I tell people all the time, even my fellow police officers, I do the training for the Kingston Police Department, the firearms training. I take those guys at least twice a year, and I tell them they should go as often as they can, and I'm willing to go with them more often because it never hurts to get more training. It never hurts.
Oh, absolutely. If you would, Kathleen, if you could, I know you've worked with a number of victims of gun violence. They've had it in their families, or they've been victims themselves. If you could relate some personal information to make all this much more real to us.
Sure.
I'd appreciate it.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we're talking now about the A in SMART. And unlike the first two behaviors, the securing the guns and the modeling responsible behavior, the A, which stands for ask, appeals not only to gun owners, but also to non-gun owners. And what ask is about is, before sending your children to someone else's home to play or sending your teen to babysit, you should really include in a safety discussion or conversation with that homeowner, if they have guns, how do they secure them? It's not so much about whether they have guns. Everyone has the right to have guns in their homes, but how those guns are secured. You mentioned that statistic, the 4.6 million children in this country who live in homes where there is at least one gun that's loaded and unlocked. I can never forget the story of my dear friend, whose name is Anne-Marie, who was or is a non-gun owner, and it never entered her mind to ask a neighbor that her son wanted to play at how any guns were secured at the home. So it happened on Christmas Eve. This was back in 1997, but the event is as real to her today as back then. And it was Christmas Eve, and Anne-Marie had to work. Her son was home, and in the early afternoon, he phoned his mother and asked for permission to play next door. And she gave this permission, and however, admonished him that he should be home by a certain time because they were expecting family that evening for Christmas Eve celebration. So her son Brian, at the time he was 12, went across the street and ended up playing with his friend, and the two of them got their hands on a revolver that was unsecured in the home. And not realizing that there was still a bullet in the chamber, the friend pulled the trigger and hit Brian in the throat, and it was fatal. And the next phone call that Anne-Marie got that day changed her life forever, and also changed all the Christmas Eves for her family since then. We've had a few other situations in Massachusetts, such as in the town of Dudley, Abington, Yarmouthport, Springfield, in recent years. So it's definitely an issue that does occur, and we as parents and caregivers really need to remember to securely store guns in our homes and ask before sending our children to someone else's home how any weapons are stored.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you, and I know I'm putting you on the spot here, and Officer Skowyra, if you want to say something as well. A little role play here, okay?
Okay.
You're sending your child to my house.
Yes.
And my husband is a hunter.
Yes.
Maybe you don't even know that.
Correct.
I mean, how can you be diplomatic?
Okay.
This is somebody you like. You want to stay friends
Yes.
with them.
This is something we teach in our BSmart presentations. We do role plays, so I'm glad you asked about that, Janet. I would say something like, "Hi, Janet. My daughter Elizabeth is so excited to come to your house today and play with your daughter. But before I send her over there, could I just talk to you about a few things that have to do with a little bit of safety? My daughter's allergic to peanuts. I hope that doesn't pose a problem. Also, do you have any pets in the home? She's a little bit skittish sometimes about dogs."
Okay, I have a dog, but I can put
Okay.
the dog away. That's
Oh,
not a
that would be
problem.
great. That would put me at ease.
Yes.
And also, do you monitor the computer time, like spent on the internet?
Oh, if they have friends over, they don't use the
Oh,
computer.
okay, yes.
That's rare.
And finally, only because I've heard such terrible stories in the news lately, I have to ask you, do you have guns? And if so, how are they stored?
Okay. Yeah, I like that. You just kind of
You build it in
you
into
build
a safety
it in, so
conversation.
it's not threatening.
Yes,
It's not
correct.
threatening.
And
Yeah.
just to let you and the audience know, today over 19 million parents are asking. It's just something we have to do if we're responsible, given the proliferation of guns in people's homes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a gun owner, obviously, right? I have multiple firearms. They're all secured. But if I don't have any children, but let's say I did, or if somebody was coming over with the kids and they asked me that question, all that doesn't offend me. All that does is tell me that
Yeah.
they're a responsible
They're
adult. They're
responsible.
responsible for their child. They're responsible, just like you said, the safety aspect of it. If your kid has a peanut allergy, you ask about
Right.
that. So,
Yeah.
it's general safety. Why wouldn't we ask?
Right.
Can't hurt.
I know,
can't hurt.
having been a parent and raised 4 children, some of these things can be awkward, but if you don't make them awkward and you introduce them into normal conversation, then people don't feel threatened
Yes.
or intimidated.
Right.
So,
And you can also ask using technology. If you're uncomfortable doing it on the phone, you can ask by email or text.
well, that's true.
People are so used to texting nowadays,
That's
you
true.
know.
Yeah, check the box, yes or no.
Yeah.
Again, Detective Skowyra, what should a parent do if their child does report there's an unsecured gun at a friend's house?
Sure, definitely. I mean, report it to the police. Depending on the specific circumstances, there's things we can or can't do. Obviously, legally, there's different things we need to jump through. But obviously, at any time you learn of any unsafe thing, whether it's an unsecured gun in a home, whether it's kids running around with knives, whether it's, you know what I mean, a 12-year-old driving somebody's car. If it's something that's unsafe and could pose a risk to not just your child, but the community, we would want to know. Depending on those details of the event, it could result in search warrants, could result in criminal charges against somebody, could result in a wide variety of things, depending on the specific circumstances.
Right.
But at the very least, the goal of the police department is to end that safety risk. So whether that's criminally charging someone, taking the firearms away, educating, whatever the details of that event are, we need to ensure that that risk doesn't continue to occur.
And I know we did talk about this previously too, as far as disclosing who you are. That's the ideal,
Exactly.
so that you can further investigate the report.
Correct.
But could you talk to that a little bit?
Sure. So relative to some of the legal hoops we have to jump through, if somebody's willing to disclose who they are, that's ideal, right? Because we need to be able to articulate if, let's say the homeowner, the gun owner, isn't cooperative with the police, doesn't want the police to come in, which is their right, right? They're not cooperating with us, wanting to come in and ensure there is no unsecured firearms. If we had to, say, write a search warrant, it's important that we have a named witness or a named victim relative to seeing this firearm or being able to describe it or something like that. If we don't, there's other investigative steps we can take, but it just gets harder to jump through those legal holes to get into the home with a
Sure.
search warrant or something like that. Obviously, if it's a random phone call that we don't get any information on and, hey, John Smith has an unsecured gun on his kitchen table, click, that could be somebody that hates John Smith, so the court might not issue
Right.
a search warrant. We need to be able to verify this information and show that there's veracity to that claim so that then we can act appropriately and get rid of that safety risk. So if you're willing to identify yourself, perfect. Makes it a lot easier for the police department, makes it a lot easier to ensure that that safety risk is now gone. If you're not willing to identify yourself, still, we would prefer to get the call than not. Maybe we're able to take care of that with a different investigative approach. Maybe we're not, but then we're still at least aware of this and able to look more closely in the future at that individual relative to relicensing or any other incidents that we have.
Right. Better to disclose. Okay.
Exactly.
And then recognize, particularly the roles of guns in suicide. And as you said, this has been a recent change to your program?
Oh, it's
Acknowledging
just a slight change. The role of guns in suicides should not be underestimated. I mean, firearms are the most lethal means of suicide. I mean, in at least 85 to 90% of cases of attempted suicide with a firearm, the victim does not survive. And when you know that in the case of teens, 41% of teens in gun-owning households have reported easy access to firearms in their homes, and when you also know that in a recent study, 17% of high school students have said that they have seriously considered attempting suicide in the past year, it is not a good thing to have a firearm accessible, especially in a moment of impulse, which is really how teens are in general. They could be impulsive. They might do something in this minute that they would never dream of doing 20 minutes from now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. This gets me to thinking, and I'm sure this would bring in your safety training. I would think a responsible parent, I guess if the child's older, maybe you could show them how to access the guns, but really, do they need to know anyway? I mean, shouldn't
Right.
those keys or whatever the combination is not be
Right.
they not be privy to?
Right, and that's a good point. So realistically, if you are a licensed gun owner and you want to teach your kid proper handling of a firearm, safe handling of a firearm, the 4 golden rules: keep your finger off the trigger, treat every weapon as if it's loaded, don't point at anything you don't intend to shoot, know your target and what's behind it, you know what I mean? If you want to teach your kid gun safety, by all means, that's your right, go ahead. But if you're the licensed gun holder and your child does not have a license to carry a firearm, does not have an FID, it's not just they shouldn't know where the keys are, they're required by law not to know where the keys are, because you're now permitting them. If you're aware that your kid knows where the keys to your safe are, then you're essentially allowing them to have access to those guns because they know how to access them.
Excellent
And that's
point.
improper storage.
Yeah.
So if you tell your son, hey, in case anybody comes in one day, the keys to the safe are right here on this shelf. That's improper storage. That would be the interpretation of the law, because now your child, your juvenile child, does not have a license to carry, could access those. Now, teach them the proper way to handle them, but don't allow them to have unsupervised access.
Yeah, excellent, excellent point. Okay, and T for tell. So telling your peers to be smart.
Yes, telling your peers. You know, we can make presentations, and we do, to the community due to the efforts of groups like Moms Demand Action and also other groups. The BSmart message is heard every 21 minutes across this country.
Wow.
However, people will listen the best when they're told by their own family member or friend. So everybody who's concerned about this topic should spread the message themselves by word of mouth with their friends and family members. Also, if anybody in your audience would like to help spread this program with us, we welcome you. We need all the people out there who are either willing to become a trained BSmart presenter or to help us, to link us with organizations in your local communities that could benefit from a BSmart presentation.
And there will be information on this program, at the end of this program, as to how you can do that, and
Yes.
also on the PAC TV Facebook site. So please be on the lookout for that. Major takeaway here. Many of the tragedies we have spoken about are preventable and therefore not accidental. There must be more responsibility from both gun owners and non-gun owners in securing guns. Modeling responsible behavior, asking about the presence of gun in others' homes, and recognizing the risks of easy access to guns and spreading the word. Detective Skowyra and Ms. Berry, I can't thank you enough. I've certainly learned a lot. I know our audience has as well. And let's hope that we don't have to be exposed to this, to be aware of this and knowledgeable about this, and that to be proactive in our community and prevent this from ever being an issue. Thank you both very much.
Thank you, Janet.
Thank you, Janet.